Well, Municipal Innovative Infrastructure Financing Conference to bring together cabinet leaders, mayors, councillors, municipal industry experts and key stakeholders in local government infrastructure financing is currently underway. And joining us to give us more information on this, we have the Chief Revenue Officer at Ntiyiso Consulting, Mr. Miyelani Holeni. Thank you so very much for joining us. It's always a pleasure to see you, sir.
Yes,
just as a start, before we get into the outcomes of the conference, I just want to know more about the key stakeholders who are there to give their input and the roles really that they're playing there, but also in particular the objectives of this conference.
Yeah, well, SALGA is the key organizer, SALGA being obviously the association of local governments and municipalities across South Africa. So they are the key instigator because they've seen really, and this is things that we've participated in, that the lack of funding hamstrings municipalities from an infrastructure point of view. So you have the likes of the Development Bank of Southern Africa playing a role. There's also obviously the municipalities themselves, you know, across, as you've introduced, the mayors and the municipal managers, and mainly the chief financial officers there. COCTA is there, the provincial COCTA is there. So basically everyone in the National Treasury, the minister was kind enough to also open the function there. So all of the stakeholders that have to do with financing. But we also have private sector companies, you know, such as ourselves, you know, who are working within the space, who are also looking keenly in terms of how do we assist with unlocking the financing within the municipality. So the purpose, as we read it and as it was designed, is to sensitize and open up the space to municipal officers on how to raise funding and how to package, you know, the feasibility study so that it can attract the right kind of funding. So it's really about being innovative. We see that, you know, mainly grants are used, internally generated revenues are being used, and all of those sources are becoming constrained now. So we're looking at outside, you know, funding. And even off balance sheet funding that can at least help municipalities to be able to carry out large-scale projects.
Now, here's my concern, and I hope you can just unpack it for me. You know, when it comes to municipalities, we're already grappling with sort of the basics. I mean, you see there's even a protest currently underway in Esterus, and I know that this conference seeks to find, you know, ways to get innovative infrastructure. Isn't that a luxury when we don't have the basics in order yet? Can municipalities actually afford to be innovative? I mean, you mentioned the fact that the ideas are being given on how to raise funds, innovative ways to raise funds. But when we don't have the basics yet, how are we going to be innovative when it comes to our infrastructure?
Of course, what we're talking about when we talk about infrastructure, we're talking about the basics, because we're talking about bulk infrastructure. So this is to fund the pipeways for carrying water, for substations. So basically, the things that will enable municipalities to be able to deliver services to municipalities. And if you understand, for instance, the capital budgets of various municipalities, whether it's the cities or the metros, it's not a big budget that is able to carry out all of the things which are required. So we suspect that in some of the cases, some of the protests come about as a result of some projects being raised by the community, or requests being raised by the community, which are not being met. So what we're looking for now is other ways of expanding the way of delivering services and building infrastructure. Let's also understand that infrastructure as well, if you put up roads, if you put up it's economic infrastructure, which helps as well with the growth of those communities within there. So from our side as Ntiyiso Consulting, our view is that, you know, we need to get the infrastructure right of the municipalities, because that is now the bedrock of how you're going to do everything else. The assets of the municipalities, the walkways, the bridges, and all of those things which the communities would be able to utilize and be able to move freely and be able to receive clean water as well as electricity. So I think those are the basic requirements and needs which communities are crying foul about.
Now, we know that our former mayor, incidentally, I'll be speaking to our current mayor shortly, but we know that our former mayor, Park Stow, plays a very huge role in the South African local government municipalities. And he spoke yesterday, I understand, on the general role of municipalities in catalyzing the economy through infrastructure development. Take us through investment, pardon me. Take us through Park Stow's conversation on the issue of infrastructure investment and how we are to invest in our infrastructure.
But basically, if you look at everyone must accept we live within municipal boundaries. And if we want to develop the economy of whichever the area is that one is under, it starts locally. And it starts with having the right kind of infrastructure. A simple example is if you have potholes, for instance, that neighborhood or that town, it's not desirable for people to be coming in. It's not easy to maneuver or to move around. So if you look at the infrastructure that starts at the local level, the same infrastructure that is being developed also opens up job opportunities for people who are within that municipality to be able to be employed, or some of them to be able to provide services there. So you can already see that, with that sort of investment, you are able to then add, to the growth of the local economy, and that trickle feeds and becomes a multiplier effect, because as you resolve issues within the local, it multiplies and continues to grow into the other areas. And the trick here is to be able to build infrastructure which is integrated, because if infrastructure is built in isolation, we can build beautiful infrastructure, but if there's no road to get to that particular place, you have not integrated the development there. So the infrastructure and the investment that is required is to look at a holistic city and municipalities and towns holistically, and be able to join the various areas so that there's a proper development. If you look at the spatial development of most of the towns and the municipalities, some of it has been concentrated, for instance, away from the major centers. And what we're seeing now with urbanization, albeit at a lower scale, is you're seeing people moving closer and closer to town because of the availability of amenities. And
in fact, it seemed you anticipated my next question, because what I was going to say is it seems that when it comes to infrastructure investment and, money is pumped into what is perceived as the economic hubs, that what traditionally was the economic hubs. And that's why we're seeing a lot of people coming into those and, further causing more stress on those municipalities. Is there a push, and perhaps these are the conversations that you're having in this conference, is there some kind of an idea to have more put into those that are not necessarily seen as economic hubs, so that they can get there and so that other parts of the country and other municipalities are actually then also well developed?
Look, if we talk about what we call catalytic projects are mainly projects which whether it's in an established area or non-established area which requires services. If you have a catalytic project, it means it can catalyze the growth of that area. You can take various examples of municipalities, some of them newly formed. If you take Collins Chabane, for instance, there's Kruger National Park, close to it. So if you open up, and put, proper road infrastructure as well as tourism amenities there, or a landing strip, for instance, you catalyze the entire economy of such a small municipality such as, Collins Chabane in the corner of our country. So if you think of catalytic projects, they are required in every community, whether it's in Iduchwa, whether it's in Lusikisiki, whether it's in the Northwest, wherever. So all of those projects serve the purpose of catalyzing the area and creating a locus of economic activity within that particular area.
All right. Always a pleasure having you in studio with us, Mr. Miyelani, who's the Chief Revenue Officer of Ntiyiso Consulting. Thank you very much for your time, sir, and we do appreciate you shedding some light for us on that conference that is currently underway. Thank you.